is too, by the way. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Hump. My guest tonight is Tom Slocum. And Tom, do you know what day today is?
Hump Day!
Hump Day! And this is The Hump Podcast, and we're going on 12th episode now. So welcome, everybody who joined in. I'm sure everybody who did joined in to see this crazy guy right here, my main man, Tom Slocum. Love having this guy. Me and him have been chomping it up about sales and sales development and cold calling for years. And I think I had you on the other show once too, maybe not. I don't remember. That was a while ago, but Mac and Zach in the morning. But glad to have you aboard. So much has happened in the last couple of years, even last 18 months. So lots of new stuff going on with Tom, and I'm excited to have him on the show tonight. Thank you very much for joining us, Tom. How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Very pumped to be here. Very exciting times. And yeah, like you said, we go back, man. Rev Genius Days, Rev League, just different things we've done. We've always supported each other in the different ventures, and now to be back and get to chomp it up is always a good time with you.
Awesome, man. Well, so I give all my guests just about 2 minutes without the ticker, but you could assume 2 minutes to just tell us where you're from. What is your main thing going on now? How'd you get to that? And we'll dig deeper, of course, into the whole, going from corporate to entrepreneurship. But just a short version of that. Where you live, family, whatever you want to say. 2 minutes. Go ahead.
All right, 2 minutes. Got it. So for those of you that don't know, right, tuning in, I'm Tom Slocum. Over about 2 decades of experience in sales. It's all I've ever done. Started in car sales, for-profit education, did real estate, found my love for the top of the funnel, self-development side of the house in 2015. Been in there since, and I really just enjoy the SDR world, what we do on a day-to-day, putting some respect on those folks. And now I run a company called the SD Lab, where now I'm a founder and CEO of, where we help orgs, right, get this motion, empower it, dive into the people, process, and tech of it, and get them set up with a scalable motion that works. Because a lot of people don't know. It's not their world, and I'm obsessed with it. It's all I think about, all I ever do. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. So I am down on the West Coast, down in Arizona in the 120-degree weather heat. But right now we're in our good time. No, right now we're in our good winter. We're good. High 70s. We're doing okay, but we're like 2 months away from that heat cranking up again. But yeah, I've lived here my whole life. I am a native. I am a unicorn. I did do a small stint in California for 4 years, up in La Jolla and El Cajon area. Came back, been here since, have a wife of going on 15 years, and I've got 2 kids. I have a son who is 13, will be 14, going into high school. And then I have a 7-year-old daughter who will be turning 8 and going into the 2nd grade. So a lot of people don't realize. They think I'm like a newcomer or I'm a new influencer in the space, and I've been around. I've got grown kids now. I've been married for a long time. I've done full sales cycle rep for over a decade. And then, like I said, I fell in love with that top of funnel kind of portion of it. Been built and scaled 4 different SDR teams from scratch. Been a VP of sales, kind of done it all, man. And my interesting fact is I've logged over 500,000 cold calls in my career. I think that number is now like over 700,000, but I kind of like the 500,000, makes it easy. But I've been doing this a very long time. As you are the godfather of it all, and
Listen, that was going to be my next little thing. The one thing that I Thank you, man. That was awesome. I learned some things I didn't know about you. I did not know you sold cars,
Yeah.
and so that's actually an interesting point that I might bring up later. But it's funny you say 700,000. I always think about like the fact that there was a time in the 90s when I didn't have a way to actually record the amount of calls that I made,
Right.
but I do
Yeah.
know that there was no speed dial. There was no, I was pushing buttons, 9, 8, 10 digits every
Yeah.
couple of seconds. and,
Yeah.
and sitting there at the desk with like my head kind of crooked. And I mean, I think we had quotas and it was kind of a way to record it. I forget exactly if it definitely wasn't being recorded into any kind of database that I could save for the
No.
rest of my life like I do now. And
Yeah.
so I think, if I had to guess, how many, if I add in those, but let's just say even just the last 5 years,
Oh, dude. You
or
probably
maybe
already
even 10
reached
years,
that.
because I went out on my own in 2016. And so, most of it was still face to face for a while, but I was making calls on the road and calls and even cold calls, like people I never called before, and face to face cold calls too. But when I started like really on the phone in 2020, I don't know, like just last year, I probably made 30. I think I have the stat, it was like almost 30,000 dials at least. And that's just recorded. That doesn't include, the calls I make. Maybe that was in Nooks. Like that's not even recorded in like Sales Loft, and like what I've called in there or in our previous platform. So, I mean, so if you average about let's just say 35,000, and I'm not even working as much as like some BDR, 30,000 over 5 years, 150,000. It doesn't sound like a
Already.
lot, but it's got to be
I
more than
mean,
that.
when you log, I mean, they say what is it, 10,000 hours for you to master something, right? And when you think
Yeah,
about that, we've done that. And I started in 2007 when I started in for profit. I kind of started in car sales, real estate. Then in about 2010, I started kind of tracking my dials. I was at Discover Card doing
2010.
Yeah, 2010 is when I got into for-profit education, and I was doing an
Wow,
auto dialer. I was calling people that filled out career builder forms, and nobody knows what that is half the time. They're like, "What's career
career
builder?"
builder?
And I'm
I don't
like,
know what
"Yeah, remember you had to always every
that.
time you went to a new website, it was always on the side of like apply for
Mhm.
college, this or that, this
Yeah,
job." And I would
exactly.
call 300 to 400 dials a day, and just calling those folks that filled out those
Wow,
forms and try to enroll them in physical college, right, online.
right.
But I mean, I've never looked at my dials. I don't care. Like I'm not one of those. I'll do 300 to 500 a day if I have to get my hat
Sure.
trick or my meeting a day. It doesn't, I get it, quality,
I think.
quantity, all that conversation. But I'm just ruthless. I'll do whatever it takes.
I mean, do you feel like it's funny because when we talk about these kinds of numbers, right? Do you feel like people um, sort of like, because you said like, oh, I can get my hat trick. It made me think about like how the work compounds, right?
hmm
So like a lead you create today or a conversation you have today, where let's say the guy says, you know, I'm not really the guy. You need to talk to this person. He works for me. Whatever. Let's say it's that kind of scenario. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, so that's kind of a referral down, which is awesome. That's what you want. And like now you like can't reach that guy, right? Okay. So the next day you're still blocking out whatever what you're usually going to do, where you might pick up one or two. But now you got this other guy to call, right? And it's like a layup, if you will. And those are always nice because it's now like, okay, well, I could still do what I need to do. What I think I've learned is like you said, that's what I love about the way you could have this set up is that you could just say to yourself, oh, okay, it's 2 o'clock. I hadn't really, oh, let me go jump on, the dialer and make 100 dials and maybe I'll pull 2 or 3 out of my hat. But I also got these other two. So now you end up with a day of like 5 new prospects to actually have a meaningful conversation with. So I
Well, and
think
that's
people
that's
cited
what
that,
people don't
like they
really.
look at
Yeah,
every day as like a zero sum every day, and it's not. Would
it's
you agree with
not.
that?
Yeah, I agree with that, and I 2 points to that is I always tell people, number one, I used to really dislike when my team would do that, or when I talk to reps and they'll come in at 8 in the morning and they'll start their day. They'll get into a call session and they'll book a meeting right off the top, right? Maybe their first dial, maybe they get lucky about within the first hour, and then they like stop for the rest of the day and they don't like go book anymore. And they're like, well, I got my one for the day. And it really, I don't get that mentality. It bugs me because you always got to account for those 0 days, or you might have a vacation coming up. Like, you just never know. And it's not get one a day. That's not the goal here. The goal is to work your shift, right? I'm a sports guy. We go until the buzzer stops. If I'm hired to do a job for 8 hours in the day, and that job is to cold call, get these meetings, even if I got that one first thing in the morning, so be it. Ride that high and ride that wave and keep getting more and throughout the day, right? Stack to where I was booking 25 to 30 meetings a month as an enterprise rep. And in enterprise, I'm talking calling the big leagues like Home Depots, the Walmarts, and I could do 25, 30 a month. And I would usually get, 3 a day. I'd get a hat trick. I would try to get myself in that position, but then I'd account for those 0 days. And to your point too, when you have like my boss all the time, I would be a sandbagger. I was the sandbagger on the team. It started becoming a trend where towards the end of the month, we would be low on numbers, and my boss could tap me on the shoulder and be like, hey, Tom, like, we're kind of going to miss number. Do you have anything? And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I had a bookmark on my Google Chrome that said opportunities, and it was stacked with Salesforce records of people that had told me yes, maybe no, maybe they call me this week. And I would just rip through that, and I could land him 5 or 6 in the last week of the month and be like, he's like, how many do you got that you could probably put in? And I'm like, oh, I probably could get you 5. And he's like, that's what I need, put them in. And I was like, okay, because I was either already at my number for the month and I was good, or we just needed to, push over so we looked good on the quarter, and I would have them ready to go. And then my team started doing that, right? And saving them. And then to your point, when you have those bad days where you're not getting the momentum, you've been calling for a few hours, it's completely dry. It's nice to have those in your back pocket, because as you know,
what do you mean dry? Hold on. I want to stop you there. What do you mean dry? Because listen, we're talking about this SDR life. So tell me what you say is dry.
Yeah, and let's clarify that for those, because a lot of folks, success to them is getting booked meetings. To you and I, they're micro goals. There's other things that we're doing throughout that session, but what I meant in that moment is you go in, you're cold calling for your 2-3 hour block, and you walk away with 0 meetings. You don't get one secured. Yes, you have combos, you do all this stuff, but you ran dry, and you're kind of like, man, nothing's clicking. People are hanging up on me. My opener's not working. It's nice to know you might have that lead in there where you can kind of rip the Band-Aid and be like, you know what? Let me call John. Let me follow up with John. He said maybe he'd be open for a meeting if I call him again. Let me see if I can get a layup or a win real quick, and then I can get back into my session. So what I mean by dry is you're not getting that kind of those the big momentum that people think is this leading book. Now for you and I, there's a lot that can go in that 4 hours of referrals
but hold on.
and learning stuff.
Yeah, but then like you said it, like if you have the other one in your back pocket, what you're saying is you launch that and you get that meeting to give you that push so that you can continue maybe your call block and it'll be better. You might even get 1 or 2 more colds, But I was thinking that like when we talk about the little micro things is more about like what we just said, which is that those people that you develop during the course of the day that say, you need to talk to this guy. He's my underling. That's a referral, right? Or you need to talk to this guy cross lateral. Doesn't matter, but it's still a referral. You still could say, hey, John sent me, John, told me, pointed me in your direction, whatever you want to say. I sometimes ask for permission to say that, of course, but it's like, you still have that to push off of. When I was thinking drive is exactly what you meant, that, it's when nothing is clicking. I mean, I have that. I mean, it's like there's nobody out there, and I know we've gone off topic a little bit, but there's nobody out there that even Steve Richard, he doesn't. Nobody has every day is perfect, right? Every day
No,
you drop in
no.
meetings like left and right. I mean, and the beauty of it though is again, during the course of that day where let's say you don't get any meetings, but yet you've learned some things. I've literally had 20 conversations and gotten no meetings. I might have activated like 5 or 6 of those leads. I've got 3 follow-ups from them, a couple of referrals. I mean, there's something there. I might have learned about my competitors. I mean, that's huge, right?
Yep.
Like all day I'm talking to field service. One of our clients is a field service technician company or software that, for HVAC companies, piping, gas, a whole host of like power gen and heavy equipment. And so all these service guys that go out and fix all these things, and they have a piece of software that manages the whole business. And so, they're like, yeah, they're just like, there's so much, there's always somebody, they always have something, right? Nobody's managing a business with nothing, like even if it's Excel, they have something, right? And so you learn like what they have, and then you're able to understand, okay, well, does this make sense? Like, do you need to, and it's like, I always go back to just finding pain, of course.
Well, and that's what a lot of SDRs and reps now can't. None of them are good at stories or the confidence. And I every time I do cold call training with orgs or I talk to these reps, like I get them fired up again because they don't realize that you are talking to, on a low end, 5 to 10 people a week within your designated ICP, right? Like for me, I'm talking to 20 sales leaders a week, right? CROs, VPs, founders every week consistently, that even if I'm not booking a meeting, I get a chance to just uncover like what they're caring about, what's their sales team struggling with. And if they're killing it, I get to learn from that. Well, what's killing it for you? What are you doing? Or, I'd love to know, okay, cold calling is working for you. How'd you get the team excited to cold call? Well, we do this or that. Now what happens after all that is the next person I call, I get to sound educated and understand their world and really help uncover their pain with really, really good discovery questions and stories of like, hey, Mark, I get where you're coming from. I was just talking with Jill over at XYZ, and she said the same thing, right? And what they were doing is this. Have you thought of that? No, Tom, I haven't. Cool. Well, I'd love to break that down for you, kind of show you what we're doing with them. Or, I could just give tips, right? And exchange value. And it doesn't have to always end in the meeting booked, right? Because then what happens is I get a follow-up email 2 weeks later. Tom, man, that tip you gave me really worked out. I want to talk with you more. I had this now for run up. What do you have there? And now I'm building trust where next thing you know, there's a deal, right?
Absolutely.
So learn from the calls. There's other goals. And I tell people all the time, there's so many other goals to cold calling than this one North Star that everyone is so focused on, which is book a meeting, book a meeting, book a meeting, pitch slap, pitch slap, pitch slap. It's not about that. There's so much more, to be able to take from one. And what I hate about it is everybody waits for that connect. Mark, you do this with me. You can sit and dial. You got a parallel dialer, or you go the old school way where you're manually dialing. You're getting voicemails, gatekeepers, all this stuff. You get a prospect to actually pick up and maybe engage in convo. And you're so quick to get off of it if you see that it isn't going to be in a meeting book that you're rushing to get back to voicemails and dial tones. Why is that? Sit and talk to them. You work so hard to get that pickup. Talk to them. Ask them really good questions. Learn from them. And then, you get back into your flow. But like, they're so quick to be like, oh, nope, you're disqualified. Got to go. Thanks. Bye. Click. And then you're in another 20 minutes of waiting for another connect. Like, learn from people.
I used to hate that. And the worst before parallel, or even some of these power dialers that now allows you to like remove the dial, like the ringing, because that was imagine my story earlier when I said it was on I was hearing the ring, all this stuff. And when you have your headset now and it's so amplified, it's like that when it does ring, it bothers me.
I turn it off. I just have it play the beat, but I don't want to hear it, right? Because that just drains you.
Well, SalesLoft does it. I don't think SalesLoft allows me to do it. I use SalesLoft and it doesn't. I don't know if it allows me to do it, or if it does, really? I haven't done it. But I actually wrote this topic, cold calling is dead, right? And I put it in quotes, because recently I had a post that said, where I was saying something, and instead of saying cold call, I said first touch, right? And a first touch phone call, to me, is just that. It doesn't have to be cold. Like we look at these things all of the wrong way. We've been trained. It's a cold call. It's an objection. You know, like people have been. It's embedded in people's psyche that the job of making a phone call to start a conversation, hence why my tagline is I start conversations, is always started out as a negative. It's always had a bad overtone. It's created the bad overtone in the recipients, the prospects, because they're like, "Ooh, this is a cold." And then people have look. All right, again, we know that. We'll preface here by saying what works for some doesn't work for others. We know that.
Yes, yeah, we know.
But like the idea of actually telling somebody it's a cold call, like even in a witty way, is really funny to me in that respect, because it's like, why reinforce the word, right, that has
a bad
inevitably that has that has that stigma on it, and right, and so it's sort of where my whole philosophy on this comes, and I'm about to launch a webinar to kind of give up the goods and the framework that I have. But it really is so like I you know, when I listen to what all these other people say online, sometimes it drives me crazy, because you know it all works, right?
Yes.
It all
It's
works.
all relative.
It's all relative. And I wrote something today too, which is I said, look, I mean, in our little world of, I don't know, maybe 1 million people, right? You still got to realize there's 135 million daily active users on LinkedIn. 135 million, right? So what makes you think that we're the only, you know, 250,000 person, you know, community, if you will, that's spouting the same stuff, you know? And the irony is, we're not.
It's the LinkedIn bubble. It's the sales bubble. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm in the same boat as you with this content creation, these creators, and you know, we've been in the game. I've been building a brand on LinkedIn for 4 years, you know, and since 2020, and there's some that were even OGs before then, and just kind of the direction we're going is crazy, to where these folks are clickbaiting. They're trying to be like, oh, you have to do it this way. Oh, this is the way. And the truth be told, and coming from two dinosaurs technically in the space now, right? Like we've been doing this for so long, like there is no right or wrong answer, right? There isn't. It's about comfortability. It's kind of understanding what works for you. And again, also, like, even when I do sales training and coaching and I dive in with these folks, I try to help them understand, like, I get what it's like to actually cold call real prospects and not just sales leaders or other content creators and doing all these things. Like you and I, we've called the roughest of the rough. I've called HR, I've called recruiters, I've called all of it, you know, automotive, finance, like I've called the real prospects, right? A VP of marketing at a true Fortune 500 versus calling a sales leader over their 15-person SDR team that might shoot the shit with me on a phone call, but that VP wouldn't, you know, or this permission-based opener stuff, right? I'm team no permission-based opener. It's not, it's to your point, why say, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you have a minute? Or, hey, this is a cold call. I know you're not expecting my call, but do you have a minute? It's a waste.
It's a Sandler.
Why?
It's Sandler.
I know. It's what everybody knows.
It's the pattern interrupt that Sandler likes to interject. It's a psychological thing, and it makes there is some merit to it. Look, there is.
There is, and I'm not dishing on it. And I've even found in my studies of it, even and women in sales crush the permission-based opener versus a male, right? The females crush it on permission-based opener with the way their tone is, and when they're calling a male 56-year-old white male in these roles, they love that stuff. They're like, oh yeah, hey, how are you, like, what can I do for you? But male to male doing that, they find it disrespectful, or they're just going to tune you out. But like I said, I don't coach, I don't tell anybody to not do something. I want you to test it. I want you to put the data behind it. I want you to go try a permission-based and a non-permission-based, get comfortable with them, and then you let the data tell you. And also, just have an arsenal of openers. I'm like look at it like a construction site, right? The construction guys, when they go to job sites, and gals, they have a truck full of stuff, right? All type of equipment. Do they use all that equipment on every job? Absolutely not. but they need it because they never know what's going to come up. And so they got to be prepared. So have an arsenal of openers, right? That like, don't get me wrong, you'll catch some cold call recordings of mine where I straight up am like, hey, Mark, it's Tom. Did you have a minute? Because I can tell on the initial pickup that I'm hearing something and I'm like, let me just ask real quick. Where other times it's straight, it's straight to the point. But I listen for those cues, but I try a whole bunch of different openers. It's not just one all the time. It just depends on the job and the ICP, the company size, everything that you're doing has nuances, but that comes with experience, right? I've got 2 decades of it, 500,000 cold calls. Same with you. I get if I'm a rookie, like, could you even fathom, Mark, going right now, 2025, becoming an SDR now and not knowing anything Just pretend you're like a 25-year-old going to be an SDR. Like, it's a lot different than what we went through. A lot different.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think just to wrap up what you said, it's about reading the room, right? It's really about like the PBO for me exactly comes when I notice something that's immediately in the call, right? Where they're, in fact, I even insert it in some cases, like if they're in the car, my kind of witty remark there is where I might infuse a little humor, or not humor. I don't think it's humorous, but they may take it as humorous. I'll say my permission base is, so it's like, hey, John, this is Mark. How's it going? Oh, hey, Mark. And then you can hear, because the way they sound, right away, you can hear that in the car. And they're like, oh, I'm fine, Mark. How's it going with you? What's going on? Oh, nothing. Sounds like you were in the car. But I'd hate for you to miss your turn. Do you have a quick second? Right. So I'm giving them respect. It's all about the pace at which I probably don't do it that slow, but I'm like, oh, it sounds like you're in the car, man. Hate for you to miss your turn. You got a quick second though? Yeah, great. So you're absolutely right. I am in the non-PBO camp, even though I coach or I get coached and trained, but my partner, Josh, constantly wants us to start that way. Like his thing is you don't know me, but I was calling for a specific reason. Do you have a quick second? And instead, I replaced the quick second with, so hey, John, this is Mark. How's it going? Great, Mark. How are you? Oh, great. Thanks for asking. I really appreciate it. You don't know me, or we don't know each other, but I was calling for a specific reason. Still with so-and-so? Because today, right, we don't know if that person has changed jobs. And in fact, the people that I'm calling have had such a amount of attrition lately. It falls well in that with this ICP, because I'll say that I'll say, are you still with so and so? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll go, oh yeah, forgive me, man. So many people have changed jobs in the last few years. It's crazy. And they go, yeah, man, it's unbelievable. People just jump a ship for $1 down the street. And I'm like, well, and now the conversation, we're like 25 seconds in already.
Yep. I love, that's like my favorite actual like opener and approach is always kind of that, where it's like, I'll come in, hey, Mark, it's Tom at the SD Lab. How have you been? Hey, I'm good. What's up? Hey, the reason I gave you a call is I see here that you are the director of so-and-so from your LinkedIn. Is that still the role that you're currently in? Yeah, it is. Cool. The reason that I ask is because I was talking with some XYZ, but now I've already confirmed I'm talking to the right person, and I know that they're still in the role before I've even got into who the hell I am or my call or what I'm even trying to bother them with. But I'm not asking for permission for anything. It's just like, hey, Mark, yeah, this is him. Hey, it's Tom. How have you been? I'm doing really well. Cool. I'm giving you a call. I see that you're the director of so-and-so at XYZ. Is that still your active role? It is. Cool. And would you say, the SDR function or the outbound function falls under you? Oh, no, actually, that would be, I know it says I'm director, but that's actually not it. I'm, just the director of my territory, actually. Or, nope, that's it. That's me. Yep, I oversee that whole function. Cool. I'm going to keep this brief with you, Mark. The reason for my call is, and then XYZ, right? And then I lead with an open-ended question. But now I've already confirmed it's them. I confirmed their title. Before I go launch on them with this whole kind of prop or pitch, To where if I just opened up and was like, hey, Mark, it's Tom over at the SD Lab. Hey, I was giving you a call because I wanted to talk to you about, your outbound team and see if maybe we could get a call booked and do some of this. And then right after I'm done word vomiting, he's like, hey, dude, like you got the wrong person. I don't do that. That's not my alley. Like,
and isn't that more frustrating? Doesn't that create more stress?
Right. And now I'm more upset and I'm like, dang, dude. And then my breath is already out. And I'm like, dang it. Like, cool. I look like an ass. I'm not going to get respect from this person because I just did all of that. Like, all right, bye, Mark. Thanks a lot, man. Have a great day, my dad. And I just wasted it. Like, or they're going to just tell you that and you can't backtrack because they could also be lying and be like, oh no, but like, that's why you confirm. My biggest quote ever is seek to understand and then be understood, right? Ask really good, relevant questions. Mark, is this you? Yeah, this is me, man. What's going on? Now I know that whatever I'm going to proceed with, you can't like back out of now. I know it's you. I know your title. You already confirmed you oversee outbound. You don't even know where I'm trying to go with this yet. So you can't like, say I'm not interested or anything. It's like, yeah, that's my role. Cool.
Right.
In that, this is why I called. I'm trying to see this, when you've kind of tackled this lately, what's been some things that your team's been, struggling with? And then I lead with that open-ended question because I want them to now talk. And people love to talk. And so the next thing they're going to do is now tell me they're either doing really well, actually tell me it's not something we're running into. Okay, why is that? What is working for you? And I still haven't even got to my value prop yet. We're not even in the conversation of what I do. No. But then after
you're probing. You are probing now for pain.
That's it. And you only get like 2 or 3 questions before it turns into an interrogation, right? It's got to be really like 2 or 3 really, really good questions that are going to lead them to where you need it to go. And once you get there, then it's like, all right, Mark, I hear you. You've got bad emails not going to the inboxes. Your team's not willing to pick up the phone. And you're like 50% short of quota kind of month over month, right? Yeah, that's why I called. Right? You're not alone in that. That's exactly what a couple other orgs. I was just talking with, XYZ last week. Same situation. What I've been doing is XYZ with these guys. Do you think maybe we could carve out 30 minutes and I could take you through kind of how that looks and see if we can help you get to that 100%? Because what you said is if you did hit 100%, it would lead to XYZ, right? And that's kind of our North Star. Does that sound fair? Do you think you have maybe, 30 minutes on Tuesday? Now it's tailored. Now it's a natural conversation. I probed a little bit without being like, because you've probed too much if they go, hey, Tom, I'm sorry. Can you tell me why you're calling again? Like, what's this about? And they're like, oh, damn, I asked too many questions. I should have cut loose a little bit sooner. But then you've asked too many because they're like, hey, man, what are you asking all this for? Like, what's up? And then you just go, you're like, oh, my bad, man. So why I'm calling, and now you're already toed. So
we're giving people nightmares. No, I feel you, man.
2-3 questions, really deep. And then once you gather that and kind of get information gathering, where the answers are going to go, potentially, and you're prepared for them. But then you get them and then you tie that to your tailored prop. And then I love ending on, does that sound fair, Mark? And most people aren't going to be like, no. And if they do, great. Now I can dig into some objections. But usually everybody's like, yeah, Tom, that sounds great to me.
You don't like Ronan will say, would it be terrible? Would this be a terrible idea? Right? Isn't that his thing? He loves to say stuff like that. I think that it works for him. It works for him. It sounds good coming out of his mouth, his tone, the way he delivers that, right? So again, to the point earlier, like, all the things that people do prophesize about work. They work. You just have to work them and work them into your repertoire. But I think one of the key things that I heard from what you said was what I threw up on the screen here, which is a 2-way dialogue, right? And our good friend Sean Cease talks about this a lot, and he and I diatribe about this a lot. And he was on the show a couple weeks ago, and it's clear that that everything can work. Some things will work for some people will work for a little bit, depending on your offer or what you're doing. I mean, breakthrough pitch even works. I've done it and it works, but there's negative downstream effects to that. Everything at the end of the day, right, is always really in the beginning of the call, right? Because you like you said, dry. That means like my opener didn't work. My tone was off, so I was up toning, and they were hanging up on me like that. Like all these things that the younger SDR or less experienced SDR might experience. is natural, right? But again, what's natural, what's the human condition? I wrote about this the other day, is to say hello, hello, how are you? Good, how are you? Like two-way dialogue. So if you start the call, which you do, like that, and you let them talk, right? Because you're like when I see gone are the days of the old school, cold calling tactics, the thing that I think about is not letting them talk. Is that what I was trained originally on, was to just vomit, bulldoze them over, and then maybe get to a question, but by then they're like, or they hung up and I can't hear, and I'm talking to myself, right? And so like that,
all of a sudden you go silent, and you're like, "Are you there?" And you didn't even hear the click happen, and you're like, "Oh, they hung up. How long ago did they hang up?" And you're like, "Geez."
Well, when that happens on like through the dialers or parallel dialers, you don't really hear them hanging up. Like you could tell if the screen will move, it'll change. But like even Nooks, for example, I use Nooks. For those who are listening from Nooks, what's up? It was like sometimes when the person hangs up, you could see it on the screen, but like I'm not always looking in that spot. I might be looking at their website. I might be looking at their LinkedIn profile on the other screen. And so all of a sudden I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Hello? They hung up. What the hell?
It's the worst, man. It's the worst.
Sometimes I think Nooks hung up. I want to blame them.
That's the one gap with these parallel dialers, and they know it. And I know that there's, progress in trying to correct it. But anybody you talk to with a parallel dialer experience, that's like the number one kind of gap, is if it's helping you scale these dials and get through the minutia of the voicemails and whatnot. But you do have to be really closely paying attention and make sure that your internet is good quality, because you'll lose at bats and conversations sometimes, because as soon as it clicks over to you, that person's already hung up. Or by the time you say hello, they can't hear you and it's already hung up. And you're like, dang it. So it counts as a connect, but you didn't get that connect truthfully, right? Because they already hung up.
Well, so to the credit of Nooks though, and some of these other ones, they've been getting better and better. Connected Cell doesn't have that problem, but like, or at least call Connect on live voice.
I love that you spelled Rock Connected Cell. I love it.
But in Nooks, I'll tell you what. I'm going to tell you right now. Nooks, frankly, I'm not afraid to say it here. Nooks I have a lot of calls even today that it beeps on my end, right?
Yep.
The guy is in the middle of his first hello. Like it's not even a second after his hello. It's like in the middle of it. I'm almost talking over him because I'm so used to coming in so quickly on the beep. And I'm like, hey, John. And he hasn't even finished his initial hello. It's getting very, very good. And I don't know if that's a Twilio thing or whatever they talk about on the behind the scenes, but I really believe it does not, like some are out there prophesizing about, it does not affect me in any way. And if it's a delay that actually causes them to hang up, it only happens maybe once.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's so far and in between.
I mean,
it's far and in between. I've seen it where most people don't have a really good internet connection, because by the time that connect's able to power through, they tend to have a beep. But no, I'm a Nooks partner. We use Nooks. We use Salesfinity as well with our clients. We kind of got both of them running. I don't see too big of an issue. Martin's the only one, but Martin, he's blind. A lot of people don't know that. So his screen reader really hurts the delay. So he deals with it a lot. He'll miss at bats quite often, because by the time it even gets through this whole process to get him that connect, it's already a little too late. Yeah. But he does great.
Well, I'm glad you brought him up, because I'm obviously invited you on to highlight you and your team and your business, but I knew when I first met you, you were still working corporate. I think you still were at, I forget where you were at, but I still knew you as a sales leader. You had BDRs under you, or had A's under you, whatever it was. And, there's a lot that goes, like I went from corporate America in 2015. At the end of 2015, I got let go from a company. My son was born in May of that year. My mother passed away in August or July, excuse me. And then I got let go in December, and I had a brand new baby. I had bills, I had all this stuff. And my wife, I believe at the time, was working at dog shelter, because I was actually making pretty nice money, and not that she didn't have to work, but like she just decided she wanted a break from whatever she was doing, and she had just had the kid, and she just needed to get out of the house too, also. So she was working in the dog shelter, and so that was it. Like she was still in the baby kind of mode, right? And so I was like, oh fuck, excuse me. I was like, I am screwed, right? I have to do something, and I actually kicked around for like about 2 months because they did give me a little bit of a severance package, but I said, what am I going to do? The same thing happened to my brother. He worked for a company for like 15 years or something like that. And then he got let go. Like they shut the doors. The whole business closed down. The old man who owned the business sold it and to corporations who sold it to other corporations, to other corporation. And then finally the corporation just sold all the real estate and got rid of it. And my brother was out of a job that he worked really hard at for like almost 18 years. And so he did the same thing. He woke up the next day. He's like, what do I do? Right. And I did the same thing. I woke up one point 2 months later and I said, I got to do something. I got to make some money. Right. And so I thought to myself, well, what do I know how to do well? And that's sell and talk to people, right? So I went to all my customers that I had when I was working the corporate side, and I asked them, hey, would you buy the same product from the company that just fired me? Because I was just like a rep. I was selling product, like a building product, like handrails and crash rails for hospitals.
You were the middleman. Yeah,
I was a sales rep. And so, but now I said to him, look, I'll sell it to you at the same price, right, that you were getting it direct from the manufacturer, but I'll install it for you. There was an install piece that was missing, right? So now all of a sudden I said, all of a sudden I was a contractor, right? Now all of a sudden I'm like, literally installing handrails and ripping holes in walls in hospitals and nursing homes. I'm not even joking. It's crazy. And I can't even tell you some of the things I did in some of these hospitals and nursing homes that's are not really great places to be on a long-term basis. You see some really sad things, but I had to figure out a way to make money for myself, right? And so it was like, there was no like fake it till you make it, or there was no like not making commission or whatever. It was like I needed to put food on the table. I needed money. I needed to pay mortgage. Like so, I didn't know what to do, right? And so I just did that. And all of a sudden they said, sure, I'll buy it from you and I'll give you the contract deal. And I was like, oh shit, now I got to go hire some people, right? Okay. And so I really wanted to dive in because I think like, you went from corporate America and you had this sort of skill set that you wanted to give out to people. So I know you were probably doing some coaching and little things on the side and said, oh, I could probably do this full time, right? And so, but now you've really taken that thing, I think when you first made the move as being your own thing, to saying, hey, I could expand this, and you hired Martin and Jamie and so on and so forth. So please just tell me, like, what happened to you? Like, what was that moment where you said, bye corporate, but fuck, I might screwed myself, but I'm gonna keep going. Like, I want to hear it.
Yeah. The story's crazy because it isn't. Like I said, I had done up until 2020. I was just the sales guy. I just did my thing, SDRing, full sales cycle rep. I ran, been at some orgs. I had just got done with a 3-year run with one company building an SDR team from 0 to 30. And then I was at my second one and I was kind of doing that with a team of 7. And then I always had as a kid the mindset of what success was, of the business guy in the suit, the white picket fence, like traveling and, staying at hotels and going to conferences, and being a sales guy was like success to me. I don't know why. I watched a lot of Dick Van Dyke and Leave It to Beaver with my grandparents and stuff. And like, that was just what I got raised under. And so sales was in my blood. And, I built these teams, did all of this. 2020 hit, COVID happened. I kind of fell into a sales community that we both were in as Rev Genius with Jared, as I was a director, right? I was running my sales team. I was remote already prior to COVID. So I was very fortunate to have already known that. And I jumped into this and I got in the community, and Rev League was born, right? I found this place where SDRs were missing the buzz of a sales floor. And for me, that was probably the only thing that ever kept me going at sales jobs, was the sales floor. Being near your peers, listening to them, jamming with them, having bad days together, the water cooler, like just working together. And then COVID happened and everybody was in four walls. So Rev League was born. And during that time being under Jared, I started getting people to be like, hey, you're somebody. You're pretty good at what you do. And you're also a very, very good trainer and coach. And reps were coming to me. I was doing office hours. We had competitions and people were literally elevating at a mass scale. I then got recruited to go be a VP of sales for an SDR boot camp. So I went and did that for 5 months from that, right? And I was like, okay, I can go do this.
What was that? That was
Train You. That was
Train You.
Yeah, that's when I got into that. They recruited me, asked me to come along. The community thing was doing okay, but it was time to kind of elevate. So I jumped into that. Well, that didn't work out, right? 5 months in, 6 months in, it was just miscommunication, missed expectations, a startup. It was just a lot of things that were just bad ingredients from the jump. So I got cut. Like we cut our ties, and this was right after SAFTR. And dude, I literally had
That's
no
still
idea.
are they still in business? Do they still train you?
They went bankrupt. They went bankrupt. They ended up falling out. One of the co-founders ended up passing away suddenly. A couple months after that, they went bankrupt. Yeah, it got bad. They were out of the UK. I helped them move into the US. It was a great time. I had a little SDR team under that. It was cool, but it was unexpected. I didn't have any options after that, and I couldn't go back to community. So I was like, okay. And I was literally going to open up for a job to say, hey, LinkedIn, use my brand. And I was like, yo, give me a job, help me out. Who wants to work with me? And then Jesse Ellett and the gang was just like, dude, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean, what am I doing? And they're like, dude, you should just go do your own thing. You have a brand now. You're not like one of these newer influencers. Like you have decades of experience at this point. Like, and what you saw in the Rev League was people need this stuff. And then working with Trainio helped me understand how many founders have a really hard time in building a sales motion because they're technical engineers. That's just the world they live in. They don't know that top of funnel. So I had a skill set that I realized to me was so second nature and just natural to me was actually a sought after skill or experience that people would pay for. So 5 days after that, I launched the SD Lab. No runway, no capital, no idea what I was doing. I spent 4 hours and launched my website with Jesse. And I was like, cool, this is what I'm doing. That was in September of 2022. We're now in February of 2025. And after about a year, I did the founder led. I built the dang thing with grit. And again, I had sales skills like you. I knew how to cold call. I knew how to run discovery. I knew how to close deals. Like I knew how to do all of that. I just had to learn the fulfillment side and the operational side to now, once I get the business, what do I do? So first year was cool. And then after about a year in, I saw validation. I had wins. I had people paying me. I saw that there was a model. But one thing kept knocking at my door was another service that I wasn't doing. And people don't talk about this. You can start your business in one direction and it might evolve to something else, right? And you have to be willing to adapt and
hockey
be aware
stack.
of that. That's it, right? You just got to move and mold accordingly because you might find one lane and you made money at that lane for that time, but then the market shifts. You just got to kind of shift with it. So I was doing consulting, sales training, and then outsourced lead gen started coming at my door, and I fought it for the first year. And then I was like, okay, I can do it just as well as some of these other organizations, and I can do it the right way. I could try to go against the statistic and the failure rate with it. Martin came on knocking at my door and was like, let's do it together. I started scaling. Now I got a team of SDRs. I've got clients. I've got renewals. Now I have a meeting engine. And now I also love it because I get to test. I get to check things. I get to run things. I get to see different markets, different ICPs. And again, to our point of a PBO and non-PBO or this email over that email, I get to experience that. And so just kind of what clicked for me of going into, do I want to build a business or do I want to do, just like run this solo thing? I've always wanted to be a business owner. I love the practitioner. I love doing the work, but I did it for so long and helped other people do their dreams of going and building these orgs, getting the carrot in front of me, promotions, all this. I'm just really good at the business side of things. I know how to coach, train, manage, operational brain. I love the CEO aspect of things versus the day in grind of like Marcus Chan, for example, is an amazing dude who can coach and work with AEs. And he loves that cohort style, one-to-one coaching and training and working with those reps. where I love that, but I don't want it to be like my lifelong dream long term or like
Well,
every single day per se, right? I like the operational side of it and run the business side of it. So about a year in, I shifted to the CEO mode, and I was like, look, I could be a practitioner and I could do this at a small level, and not everybody needs to scale their business to $1 million or 20 million and get an exit, be this unicorn. And I'm not even trying to do that still, but I want a team. I want a staff. I want to run things and focus on the vision and the strategy and the operational side, and then go find the right talent, the right people that I can coach, mentor, give them a training grounds to learn of the world of sales. And then I can send them off into the world of sales, like after they're underneath me. Like I could just do that stuff and then just get really good people that like those individual elements of the business that I can, put them in and they'll thrive versus me trying to do all of it. So it's kind of just all of that journey. And now we're on year 3, doing good, right? 6-figure business. We're not at the $1 million club like everybody claims on LinkedIn they are. It's not easy.
Well, look, it's not easy. I mean, if you're like, what I think is interesting about your model, and like you go to your website, you see it's like you're not like, yeah, you're doing the coaching thing, the training of an actual team outside of your own business, and then you have this. Okay, so if you don't want me to just train, when you identify what their real it's like you have a way you could pivot on those calls, right? When you're doing discovery, when you're identifying really what their problem is. They may have a team. They don't need SDRs. They don't need you they don't need to pay you an additional whatever you charge, right? And I'm sure, like, look, I've been doing it for 4 or 5 years already in 2 different companies. And one of the biggest challenges in scaling a business development outbound function, cold calling, appointment setting, whatever, however it's laid out. I noticed, it's laid out on your site a little bit about, what your expectations at these different levels, be it startup, growth, enterprise. And so, set those expectations, and, at the end of the day, to really accomplish things at a high level, you've got to be hiring and acquiring, I guess, people of talent, right? Jamie or Martin or whomever. And it costs money, and it's always an issue because depending on what you're charging your customer, and of course they have to pay it, right? So there's always that fear, right? And it's like, are you making enough money? And so what's interesting in that respect, I think, is if you've got those other consulting pieces to the puzzle, right, which is just maybe you and the process, and it's easier to deliver, it's more profitable, if you will. It supports the rest of the business that you can continue to scale on the other side, which I think is interesting.
That's what
you don't have to be $1 million. Look, I mean, we did in our first year, I think we did in 2022 to 2023, we did about, I'll say it, we did like, what was it, 640,000. I mean, that's not $1 million. But that was great. And this year, I think we did, or last year in 24, we did about the same, almost 702, right? So same thing, right? It's like, but I could tell you in terms of profitability, right? So like when people tout, when people tout,
they have whatever profit number you want. Like, profit is great, but the interesting fact is I have actually healthier profit margins than I thought. They're still obviously right on par with most lead gens, but most business owners only actually get like a 5 to 8% profit margin. Restaurants are the worst, right? Like, I used to sell advertising at Yelp to restaurants. Like, their average cost per plate or profit per plate was like $1.20, dude. $1.20 for a $25 meal that you're putting in front of somebody. And like with the chefs and the cooks and the waitresses and the beer, the alcohol, like lead gen is something that I was just telling a client the other day, or a prospect, they wanted a Lamborghini for Honda pricing. And they're like, okay, well, what would it cost if I wanted it this way? And I was like, well, it's going to cost you 10 to 12K a month for something like that, to get the right talent, get the structure, get the tech that you're like ideally want. Like, all of that is almost $12,000 a month if I charge you what I should be charging you, but you're getting it at this price, and I'm already losing money on it, right? I'm already out $700 a month with that margin. If I give you this discount or make it work this way, my price is my price, and it can only work this way because, again, I'm your growth partner. I've got the tech, I've got the talent, I've got the enablement side of it, but it's going to cost, right? And so it's a really interesting industry, and people don't talk about it. And that's with any business. You look at Vin with Creator Buzz is doing a great job documenting this journey, right? And he's every month kind of showing his Montana, he's doing his whole revenue by month and expenses and the things that he has to do. And when you start scaling, that's why you just got to look at, do you want a solo thing? Because to your point, my rev program, like my consulting and my sales training, no one executes that but me, right? That's an all-time job. I come into the org, we work together. That's a way higher price tag, and my profit margin is like 85%, 80%, where like my lead gen is almost like 42%. So if I charge this amount, I'm only getting 40% of that, and that's not even including taxes or any of the other parts. That's just not the initial.
See, again, entrepreneurship, right? Yeah. Like what people don't realize, it's great to talk about the good stuff and the numbers and all that, but there's a lot more that goes into it, and not everybody realizes, like in my first business, the first business that I went into, I told you, in contracting, one of the biggest issues that I had, right, was I was doing the work. Mm-hmm. Which took me away from getting new business, right? And so initially, I was as a rep, I was actually like an independent rep for a little while, where I was selling multiple products, just sales, right? And the way you scale that is just hire other people, right? But the thing is an independent rep only gets commission, right? So I only make there was a time in my life I was only making commission, right? Like, and I only make it until it was sold and actually installed. Right. So it's like you go months without making any money. And so how in the world am I supposed to hire somebody else, right, to do that? I was like, that's not happening. Right. And so like you had to have money to invest in that kind of model. The same thing was with the contracting business. The contracting business for me was like I had to hire people, and I was managing the jobs. I was on the job. I was doing the job. And I just didn't have time to continue to grow it. I just had existing customers that I was growing the business with. It was more of like a land and expand type of role. And that was fine, but how do you grow that, right? So you got to hire somebody else. But that means I had to pay that person, which at one point in my life and owning the business, I didn't want to do that, right? And like, I tried to hire people on a consulting, on a 1099 basis. I'll pay you when you make your money, right? Because I'm only dealing with the manufacturer. Once I sell it, they pay me, I pay you, right? And they were like, and I tried that for a little while, but like it's hard for people to work. It's a certain personality you have to work on straight commission, right? Some people think they can do it, and some of the people that I did hire, unfortunately, in the long run, didn't work out, and I wasn't able to scale the business. And so, and I woke up and I said, hey, I want to go work for somebody else, and I did. I actually went to work as a VP of sales for one of the products that I was selling. I was selling like 9 different products. I went to work for that guy. He came to me and he asked me like 3 times to help build his sales team. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like I was independent. I had my own hours, and this was to be like working in the office, in an office. I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. He was going to have me in the office all day. I didn't want to do that. And then, after a while, when I realized I couldn't scale the business, I said, maybe I'll take that job and try to grow his business. And it wasn't actually the perk there actually was, besides being VP of sales and building a team, was that we did a lot of shows. So I did a mess of traveling. I went to the Bahamas, I went to Vegas, I went to Dallas and Austin a couple of times, so that was actually nice. And I really liked that because I never had that opportunity in my life. And my brother had that, and I always looked up to him for it. I want to do that one day, and I never had that chance because I was always like a territory rep and manager in the city. And then I had this opportunity, right? And then COVID hit, unfortunately, right? And so everybody's life changed then. But it's interesting that people don't understand, like, the grass isn't always greener. It doesn't mean you can't be successful as an owner, but don't think it's all fucking rainbows and roses.
Don't let the internet, don't let the internet throw you off, man, because it's not
insurance. Right?
Too.
Like,
Lord.
Like I was in a different business where I needed like liability, but like, like even if you're hiring people and you want to do it right, if you're doing it right and you're paying them as a W-2, that means you're paying workers' comp, right? And if you're paying workers' comp, that means you have to have insurance, other insurance as well, like O&M or whatever. And so like people don't get that. They're like, oh, I made $1 million. We sold $1 million ARR. Okay. At 7%, that's 70 grand, right? After taxes, EBITDA, right? Seven, it's like, okay. I mean, you're not making that. That's why like $1 million business doesn't sell for a multiple of that million, right?
No.
It sells for a multiple of the EBITDA, right? That's earnings before interest, taxes,
Yeah.
amortization, and depreciation, right? And so when you know that, then you really are like, okay, so my EBITDA is only 70,000. And so what does that mean? That means I could probably, in SaaS business, if you sold it today, you get 6, maybe 8 times. Let's say you even get 10 times that. So you're going to get 600,000 for your business. You can go get a VP of sales job at 250 and make that back in 2 years.
Well,
And it's
that's
like,
the conversation I just had with somebody today. It's just people gotta realize when you go into building your own thing or you go into this solo journey, entrepreneurship, whatever you want to do, fall in love with what you do because there are other perks, right? And it's just one of those things of, do you want the 9 to 5 security and the consistent pay, but also have to be at work every day and explain when you need to use the bathroom or be limited on when you can go, like time off, like all these other things?
yeah,
Or do you want to be solo and it takes time to get something, literally you're building something from zero. Now, if you've got runway, you set yourself up very nicely, you've got a trust fund, your parents got your back, like, cool, man, go do what you got to do. But that's not for everybody, right? Not everybody has that luxury. And it's a grind. And you've got to be in love with what you do, because there's going to be days where you're going to be crying in the shower, or you're going to be on your last dollar to your name before that bank account's about to break the next day and something's going to come across the table, I know a buddy right now who's been building his business for 3 years, and he's like 300, what did he say? Like, he's almost like 540K in business debt in the last like 2-3 years, but he's that committed to his business that he's trying to get it off the ground. And he's like 500K in the hole. Some dudes I know are double mortgaged out in their houses, or this and that. Like, you find ways to make it work if you truly believe in what you're doing. But it isn't, hey, we're crushing it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, dude, in 2 years, I'm making 6 figures. I've got a business. I've validated. I'm closing. I've got customers. That's cool. But am I making billions of dollars? Absolutely not, man. And everything has a trade, right? Time, money.
Tom, you live in where in Arizona?
I live in a little place called Santan Valley. It's out in the East Valley, middle of the boondocks with the horses and cows.
Oh, okay. If you said Scottsdale, which I know happens to be very expensive, I would have said, like, that's the other thing. Like the other day, like somebody posted something, they were talking about where they live in, I forget who posted it, and they live in somewhere in California, Santa Ana, California. And I looked up the median. I know who it was. It was, I think Landon Meyer, right? Landon Meyer.
Yeah.
He wrote something about, I could go do this and it would pay me $10,000 a month. And I thought, well, you'd have to move. Because at 10,000 after taxes, is like 6,300, and then you said the median rent was like 4,000 and change in that area, or even I think it's like 6,000 or something. I don't know. It's ridiculous. And I was like, you wouldn't even be able to go like put milk in the fridge. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. So it's all relative, right? And so I think
Well, you just gotta find, you gotta find what works for you.
I know we're a little bit over, but like, I'm curious with respect to like, because I know you were doing this coaching thing, and it was your brand, and it was even SD Lab. When was where was the turning? What was the turning point where you said, okay, well, why don't I hire like when you hire somebody, again, you're responsible for their life. Essentially. And so what was going through your mind when you said, I'm going to pay somebody a W-2, like take on, because that was my problem. Like my issue back then was I was afraid of that. And I just hired these 1099s, and I was like, it's not that I didn't have the money. I had money, but I was sure like how much money, because like when you hire somebody, you have to say like, I want to offer them a $75,000 salary. You should have $75,000 somewhere put away. Like, you can't just hire somebody and expect, I mean, it's going to come in, but you got to have you got to know that you're going to pay it, right? And if you're committing to it, right, you got to know all the numbers work, So like when was that point, and like what went through your mind when you said, yeah, I could do this?
Client load, first and foremost, is I did start getting in clients, and I started realizing my outbound was now suffering because of the execution of what I had going on. So I started kind of going through this up and down where I'd close some clients, great. I'd start executing, my funnel would start to fall off, and I'd start kind of getting into a financial bind again. And so it was just kind of fluctuating to where I was like, okay, clients are validated. I got my first few wins. And really, I waited the first year. I was really bought into year one. I've got to do it. I've got to do everything from the ground up. I've got to be aware of what's going on, how things work, get the process locked in, get it repeatable, figure out what customers want, and kind of go through all those growing pains. And once year one completed, it was like I had a couple of people knocking at my door being like, Tom, like, where you at? Like, how are things? And I was like, okay. And one of them, Martin, was like, dude, I want in. And I was like, well, number one, it was full transparency of where I was at, what I was seeing, what was going on. But it was one, client load. Number two, it was just, I can do more for the business if I can have somebody helping me, in this area. Because I started looking at my time. I tried to break down my time on a weekly basis. And I was like, okay, what chunks are just minutia and not like the identity of Tom? Like I need to have my hand on that, where anybody could put their hand on it and it could kind of run as long as I enable it and move it along, and empower it. Right. And then the money, right? I had to make sure like, okay, I closed some clients. I got some validation. Now what I can potentially do is I can try to go get one or two deals at this price point. And with this price point, it would actually allow me that wiggle room to get this person or that person in here.
Yes.
And so then I'd go try to price that out, or I went back to my past clients and I said, hey, you worked with me. We did the thing. Appreciate the trust you gave in me. You know what you paid. What would you have said, knowing what you know now? Would you have paid this? And they're like, 100%. If you would have told me that would be it, I would have still done that. And I said, okay. And they kind of helped me out.
I just left $10,000 on the table.
Yeah. I was like, okay, cool. So I'm good. And they're like,
so you fucked me last time, and now.
Yeah. I got it. You got the deal. And they're like, yeah, but I gave you a case study. I'm like, fair, So, but I learned that, and so I was like, okay, so if I charge this, I can get this structure. I was very honest about the payment structure, how it would work, like what was tied to. I had to be very transparent with the person I was hiring, and like the people that everybody knows if they come to me, I'm very, very transparent about where the business is, what's going on, so that everybody's on the same page. I'm not selling you pipe dreams. I'm not going to try to, get you hired and then, shit goes south. I tell you how it is. You let me know if you're good with those terms. If you are, then we lock in. If you're not, that's okay too. Yeah. But it was client load. It was validation that I had a model. I had gotten a couple wins. And then 3, it was I could price accordingly to make up that, and be able to service that person that needed this amount per month to do what I asked. And so now I've got a team. I've got SDRs now. I've got a few of them under my belt with my clients. I've got Martin. I've got Leal, a VA that I just got. It took me forever to get a VA. Very glad I did that one. I should have done that from the very jump. She's saving me like 20 hours a week now, which is just wild. I was just so scared, man. I didn't want people. I've heard so many bad stories about VAs like hacking accounts, stealing shit, doing this and that I just didn't even really want to deal with it.
I just wish we could hire a VA. My thing is I wish I can hire a VA, and I understand why they don't do this, but I wish I can hire them just like by the hour. And
you can.
Not by the hour. Like I know I could say to you, okay, here's the project. How many hours? And it's like, I don't know, like with DJ Kim and a couple others, they want you to like commit to like the minimum a month.
Well, that's why like Fiverr and like doing
40 hours. Well, Fiverr we have Fiverr, and Josh does that. But I'm saying for myself, even like with Fiverr, even though that scares me, right? Like I like these other ones that are a little bit more.
Protected. They've got a process. They've got like
like DJ's business. Like what's that? I forget his
Cherry Assistant.
Cherry Assistant, right? And so I think that is like a really. I've used them and it's great, right? It's just like the guy that they gave me. I don't care where he is. He spoke English and he told me that he could do it, and then he gave me some ideas on how to do it better than I thought, and that was it. That's what I wanted. And so, yeah, definitely. And with this show and all the content I'm producing, like, if I did have somebody, I could probably come up, like, he always says, you can't come up with, like, he tried telling me on it, like, you can't come up with like 40 hours for the whole month. Like, he only has 40 hours a month. That means 10 a week. He's like, you can't come up with 10 hours a week. And like, and if you really do discovery call with him, he'll break it down, say, tell me about your day. And like, he'll be like, I'll be like, oh, I do this. Okay. So like, what could you be doing else otherwise? If you didn't have to do that. And I was like,
asking all the questions.
You got a good point. It sells itself.
It changed me, man.
It really does.
It really does. And I thought it just from other reasons, of just kind of getting comfortable with it. But ever since I've had it, like, SOPs are the hardest part, just getting them, familiar with the project or the task, getting them into motion. But once you do, like Leal, shout out to her. I even posted about it today. Like, she's like, I just upped her hours more. She's taking on more, and like, she just shows up. And I'm just so relieved that now I can like have my life back and a little bit of balance. Cause as another founder, you trade in the 9 to 5 for 9 to 9, 18-hour days. Like, people don't realize that. And it's not like I'm logging every day off at 5 o'clock and I'm just out here going on a hike with my kids, or like, I'm working, but it's just, I love what I do. It's not really work, right? Like when you're working a 9 to 5, because I just love it. I'm obsessed with what I'm doing. But now I don't do that, right? I can log out and go have dinner with the kids from 5 to 6, 7, because half the stuff I was having to do in those off hours, once the meeting stopped and the day-to-day stopped and I could get to it, now she's already done while I was doing the day-to-day. And now I have that time back. It's just really nice.
Yeah. The opportunities that come with entrepreneurship, and even just work from home for that matter, with respect to just being over with the kids. I like my parents, of course, they were, they left. My father would leave before me. I would leave in the morning, my mother, she raised 3 kids and still came home from a job running a huge daycare facility, to cooking dinner and doing the laundry and all that kind of stuff. So working hard, and just that's just ingrained in us, and maybe our generation or whatever, your generation too. But it's like, it's interesting because people say, well, it's you're sacrificing. You don't do it in sacrifice of your family or this or that. And I'm like, I do it like right now, like even after we finish this call, like I'll go and I'll eat something. My family has already eaten. That's okay. And I'll eat, and then I'll probably come back in here and bang out some things for an hour or two, until like I don't go past 9:30 anymore, really, because and so like, but it's still like, oh, what are you grind? It's not a grind. It's sort of like, hate the word grind. I really do. I use it, but I don't use it like, it's not derogatory or negative for me. It's more like just the fabric of how it's the cloth I'm cut from. It's just, I love doing it. It's a passion. Like you said it earlier. It's like, I love what this is. Like, even if I'm doing something that somebody tells me, oh, AI could do that for you a lot easier or whatever, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I always like, that's why I never liked, like I said this last week too, is like rev ops or sales ops that would do the research for me and make the list, was always more of a waste of time for me sometimes, because they would give me the stuff that I didn't really want. And I'd wind up talking to people that I didn't really want to talk to. And now when I, at night, sometimes I'll be on LinkedIn and Zoom Info, and I'll look up a couple of new companies and I'll check them out and I'll see what they're about and blah, blah, blah. And then I'll load them up into my list, and I love doing that because I know tomorrow I'm going to have a great day, like I just.
Awesome day. I'm putting in the work. Yeah. Like, I'm going to be good.
Yeah. And so it's like, I don't know, man, the doing the job, I think is slowly, or is a little bit gotten lost on people with all the technology and all the other tricks and tips. It's like, do the job and learn from it, and don't always worry about, like you said, like you it comes to you. It's like, wow, okay, I built this thing, and now I'm getting this recognition. I'm getting these people to understand, hey, I could, this guy can do this. Let me hire him or his team, and blah blah blah. And so it just takes time. I think some folks out there, whatever generation they may be, are really impatient, right? And they get
Yep.
bored so quickly. And it's like, oh, why did you go from this company as an SDR to the other company as an SDR,
Oh,
to another company as an SDR? It's like, oh, well, I wasn't going to get to AE over there, which is really the truth. That one I got fired from, but they had a riff. That one over there, whatever, right? And so I said, oh, I could go over there and I get this offer. And my friend went over there and they became an AE. And I feel like that's the other. I mean, we could talk for hours about. I didn't even get
I
into
know we
social
could. I know.
selling and selfies and all that kind of stuff, but I really
Well,
do
just run it
love.
back. We'll just do it again.
Yeah, I love the story. That's what I really was hoping you dig into, is really that move to entrepreneurship, and for us to talk a little bit about, for the audience to understand that it could be done, and it could be very how you say, successful, depending on how you're defining success, right? Like
Yeah.
for you, it seems to me, in summary, that it's a passion. It's giving you the time back, even with your family. It's not taking. You always had a really close connection with your family, anyway. I know that, but um, it's giving you this like engine, right, to live your life the way you want, and that could be, even still comes with
That's what success
trials and
is, you know?
tribulations.
It
So
does. Yeah.
thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me. I mean, I would say us because it was sponsored by SDR Insider, which is my friend anyway.
Hey, yeah.
And I really thank you. I always love talking with you. You've always supported me as well, even given me a reference, I think at one point, which was really kind of amazing. And
Yeah.
I always support what you're doing. I love Martin and the team that you've been building, and maybe I should come over there. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Hey.
But
No, you're not.
in all seriousness, what?
I said,
Would you?
no, you should come over. And I was like, but I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
kidding.
Well, I didn't want to be really obnoxious and say you couldn't afford me, but that's all right. Um, it's nobody can. I'm actually cheap, and maybe that's to my dismay or my demise, is that I have given a lot away, and I haven't really always been about money. But I said this a couple of weeks ago. I said that's not a bad goal to have. Like, I want to have more time with my family. I want to take my family on vacation. The
That's
only way I
it.
could do that is if I
That's
work
it.
my ass off for money. Money is not a bad thing, and it comes in time, and people just got to be patient. You don't got to be 25 and exiting a company, right? I mean, yes, if
No,
you
no.
graduated Stanford, and you got three guys that get together and you take advantage of a market that says they need a dialer, and all of a sudden you sell it for 20 million. Well, listen, good for you.
Yeah.
Anyways,
That's
thank you for
some
joining
people get
us.
it.
I got the SD Lab is where people could find your business and talk to you, but of course on LinkedIn, anywhere.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any parting words?
No, that's it, man. It was great being with you, man. Always, we could chat for hours. We'll have to do it again, get real tactical with some cool stuff. But if anybody had questions that they wanted to bring up or ask, hit me in DMs. I'm always around. I'm actually managing I'm there. You guys will see me all the time. So feel free to drop on LinkedIn. Or if you want some business needs and you want to chop it up, you can go through the SD Lab, and happy to help. But it was an honor, Mike. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Absolutely. Well, listen, stick around for just a second while we wrap it up. But thanks again, everybody, for joining the Hump this week's episode 12 with Tom Slocum from the SD Lab. Join us next week, where I'm bringing in, holy crap, I was about to say Shane. It is not Shane next week. It is, oh my God, am I such a fool that he's going to hate me if he's watching this right now. He's actually a really interesting guest, a little bit different. We're not going to be talking about Andrew Jacks. I don't know if you know Andrew Jacks,
Ooh,
but
yeah.
Andrew Jacks is his program is this like the sales guy, dad, health, workout, that kind of stuff. He's all about health and fitness, and runs a business himself. And works with business owners like yourself who don't have the time for exercise, and he's got a number of unique ways in which he can help dad bods, I guess he calls it, get back into shape. And I'm 52 years old, or coming up on 52 in April, and I am one of those guys who has started some programs, and then
Nice.
eventually like let them filter out, and I stopped doing it. Typically I get sick for like 2 weeks like I've been now, and it goes to shit. But he's got some really unique ways on how to really keep consistency with your workouts and still continue to manage your business without stressing and getting a heart attack. So I'm excited to have him on, because really we typically have on the show what is your hack, your hump hack of the week to get over the hump. And you can tell us if you like, but he's really the whole show is gonna be about that next week. So join us next week for episode 13 with Andrew Jacks, and then Shane is actually Shane Mahi, if you guys know, from Mega AI. He's coming on the show at the end of the month, and we're actually doing an afternoon show at 12:30 because he's in the UK at 5:30. So he thought it would be 5:30 in the UK, and I was like, all right, we'll do it 5:30. Which is 12:30 Eastern time. So join us live 12:30 for lunchtime on the 20. What is that? The 26th? Yeah, 14 days from now, 26th. So thanks again, Tom. Thanks everybody for joining. Peace.
Peace.